Hey landlords, this is Eric, and I want to thank you for listening to this episode. And I have a free offer for you, and I also have one request. The free offer is that we have a private Facebook group called RentPrep for Landlords. If you go onto Facebook and you put in the search bar, RentPrep for Landlords, you'll find the private Facebook group, and you just have to click the join button. I will personally reach out and accept you into the group, and once you're inside, you'll see that it's a great resource for landlords because you can crowdsource your questions or concerns that you're having, and a bunch of landlords just like you will chime in and help you out. And secondly, I have a request. Our podcast has grown mainly from word of mouth advertising. So if you know a landlord that you think would enjoy our podcast, we'd really appreciate it if you told them about it. We appreciate all the feedback we get from you, and we look forward to making more episodes in the future. All right, welcome back to the podcast, Steve. How you doing today?
I'm doing excellent, Eric.
Yeah, well, we got a kind of a quirky podcast for you today. Just kind of researching some landlord-tenant news, doing the old Google search. And I got a pretty funny one that came up, and I just wanted to get your take on it.
All right,
here it is. So a Melbourne-based Reddit user took to the popular discussion platform to talk about the fact that his landlord is actually installed a coin-operated toilet in his apartment.
I love it. All right.
So I've heard of coin-operated machines, for your washer, your dryer, but have you ever heard of anything like this before?
Never. And a part of me is wondering, how... I know that this is not something on the market. This dude built a coin-operated toilet specifically thinking I got a new stream of revenue here. It's one part evil genius, the other part very short-sighted gain, in my opinion. I think it's a terrible idea. I'll give you a list of ideas why, but I can't ever say that I've ever even heard of a coin-operated toilet, and I feel like if they existed, maybe there are some places where it would make more sense to use it, right? A gas station that never feels good about having you use their bathroom anyway, and they make you have a key that's connected to those
giant keys they always give you. They shame you before you go to the bathroom.
Yeah, you're
which is messed up because you're already feeling shameful using a gas station bathroom as it is, and then you got to walk through the parking lot with this with
a hubcap and a key, right? You already feel bad that this is an emergency.
It's kind of like a scarlet letter, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, look at him. Oh, I know. We've all been there. Yeah, in that case, sure, coin-operated bathroom, I can kind of get it, but for your own tenants, man, it is wrong. I'll give you a relatable situation, right? So my son plays hockey. We go all over the place, traveling all around, playing in all these different hockey rinks. And I remember one time we were in Cleveland, Ohio, and there's this rink there that was freezing cold. Usually it's an ice rink, so it's usually it's usually cold. But normally in the stands for spectators, they have these heaters that hang down and kick off a pretty good amount of heat that'll keep you warm so you're not freezing to death sitting there watching your kid play hockey. Well, this one rink in Cleveland, they actually had a token-operated heating system that you had to buy a token for $1 in the lobby. So somebody, maybe you have a team vote or, a parent vote of who's going to be the one buying the tokens, and it gives you 15 minutes of heat. And the response was crazy that the parents couldn't believe the audacity of this rink because you're used to getting it free everywhere else. And so nobody saw it as, oh, I get it, and it's a way for the rink to make some extra money and this and that. They looked at it as extremely selfish or greedy and just a terrible idea and something that you shouldn't be charging for to begin with. I kind of feel the same way in this situation with the landlord-tenant scenario where he's charging to use the toilet. You're not going to create a great relationship with that tenant pulling some stuff like that, whether it's even legal or not. I'm not even 100% sure.
Well, but I'd like to believe that all of our listeners, want to say confidently 100% of them would never do this or even think of it.
No. I'm telling you right now, there's a landlord listening that's going, that's a great idea for sure. Yeah, that's genius. Now, this is a good example of some things that may make financial sense. Okay, I don't know what he's charging to use the bathroom, but obviously he was doing it for the purpose of adding an additional stream of revenue for himself.
Stream. Is that a
that was an intended pun. But good one.
A lot of potty humor on the podcast.
Right. But classic example of, is the juice worth the squeeze? I don't think that you're creating a great relationship with this tenant, which does matter. At the end of the day, it does matter. You don't have to be best friends with tenants. A lot of landlords will tell you they, very smartly keep themselves at an arm's distance or a very professional relationship with the tenants. I completely agree with that. But you also don't want to pull something so crazy that you're giving somebody legitimate reason to say you're a bad person, you're a bad landlord. What are you doing?
I'm sure that's the language that tenant used when they saw the coin operate. I'd be curious too. Like, did he like enter this apartment and it was there one day, or was it at the very start of the relationship? And I've actually got a little bit more information from the Reddit post here, and it's kind of funny. The tenant stated that he says, "I understand in our laundry that we have to pay for the communal washing machine, but I pay the water bill that goes into my apartment." He said it was a government incentive to save water, but then why does he get to collect the money?
Yeah. Well, so let's break this down from a legal perspective, right? If that person was already a tenant there and they came in one day and the new toilet was installed, could the landlord legally do that? The answer is no. You're changing the terms of the lease in mid-lease in that case, I would imagine, because you're now imposing an additional fee that they're going to have to pay, right? Where if it wasn't stated in the original lease, then I don't think that they would even legally be able to do that. Now, if they entered into the lease based on the premise that they would have to pay to use the toilet and that tenant agreed to it, then you got yourself a legitimate deal there. But you can't just spring it on them and say, guess what, now you got to pay to use the bathroom too. And I think it's baloney that it's a government incentive to reduce water usage. That's why they have low flow toilets and things like that. There's other ways around that, at the end of the day, you usually don't have a choice to go to the bathroom. Well, I don't have enough money, I'm just going to hold it. That's crazy. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well, if you're curious what the actual machine looks like, you can go on our website. I'll post the picture on our podcast episode here in the show notes.
Does it look real? Like somebody it professionally manufactured this, or does it look like some rigging that a landlord just like added to a toilet to make it coin operated?
I couldn't tell you. It doesn't look bad.
Wow.
I'm telling you, it's an Australian toilet, so it doesn't really count because it's, flushing the wrong way.
Yeah, exactly.
But, I mean, pretty impressive if that landlord put it together himself,
Wow. He can choose better things to spend his talents on, I got to imagine.
This story, now that we're just kind of talking through it kind of reminds me, too, of the idea that there's kind of these social norms that we live by and what is acceptable and what is not. And, nowhere ever has there probably been a lease where it's just talking about a coin-operated toilet. And it's what we're used to. And therefore, when you introduce something like this, it's crazy. But the idea of a coin-operated washing machine is not crazy.
Right.
And it kind of brings up the idea, too, that when you have a tenant, like the relationship that you have with them on day one is setting the precedent, So I know I've ran into this situation in the past where I never addressed raising rent from the beginning.
Right.
So it made that conversation after the year was up awkward for me, where if you can have and communicate all these things up front, exactly what's going to happen, then it's not as strange going forward because, you're setting the precedent and you're putting everything in writing at the beginning.
No question. That's a great point. A lot of landlords run into that where you're having to have these awkward conversations or you're not sure how to approach it. I know that we've talked about it in the past, Eric, about your smoking policy, not so much the policy itself, but a minor detail that you haven't ran into it, so you didn't think of it, of where to put the cigarette butts. And sometimes things like that may show themselves after you've been doing it a while, and that's where that experience starts to come into play, where you're like, oh, I've been there, I've done that. I'm going to write this smoking policy, and I'm going to make sure I include where they're actually putting the butts, too, because I've had that issue. So, a lot of that comes with experience, but again, I can't imagine a world where people are paying to go to the bathroom. That seems completely insane to me. Maybe it does catch on. I don't know. Maybe it does. We'll see.
Yeah, well, all your crazy ideas, they start in Melbourne, Australia, and then they just slowly work their way out to the U.S. here.
I can't imagine somebody showing up to an apartment showing, and then they get to the bathroom part, and they're like, and by the way, you got to pay to use the toilet, and the person's still like, great, I really love this place, and it's got everything that I need. I mean, you got to knock it out of the park in every other category for them to be like, fine, I'll deal with paying to use the bathroom.
It looks exactly, looking at the picture here, just like one of those coin-operated where you put like the 4 or 5 quarters in the slots, and then you just kind of like shove it in and it makes that weird noise. And I don't know, it must, when you push that button in or something, it releases water into the top of the tank so that it can work again or something.
Man. All right, now, so playing devil's advocate here, knowing how bad sometimes tenants can be and destructive that they can be, what if you get a tenant that says, you know what, I'm not paying for it and I'm certainly not holding it, and now you got yourself a toilet full of problems.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You're lucky if it just stays at a toilet.
Right. I can see that being an issue too. I mean, geez, don't create that problem for yourself if you're a landlord. Make going to the bathroom free.
Yeah, I think that should be, a new hashtag, free toilet. Protect this renter's rights.
Free pee. Yeah.
Free pee. There you go.
There's other ways to make money. There's ancillary services that a lot of landlords, and especially property managers managing, larger amounts of properties or units, they're making money on the back end for cable, internet services, telephone, things like that. There's other creative ways to create additional streams of revenue than using someone else's stream. That's the last one.
I think that's the perfect way to end this episode.
Yeah.
I liked it. Free P, streams of revenue.
Yeah.
You heard it all here. We'll try to clean it up for you next episode. No promises.
All right, Eric. Thanks.